given. What he was given was a starting staff of which 80% weren't around at the end of the year. 80% of his starting staff at the beginning of the season wasn't around. People are highly critical of the way Ausmus uses his pitching staff, the way he's worked his pitching staff. And you start thinking about that 4 of the 5 starters that he started the year with weren't around for the end of the year. It actually probably is one of the biggest reasons that they still had a chance to make the playoffs, one of the biggest reasons as to why. Another reason is given the setup guy worked himself out of the job within 2 weeks, Mark Lowe. The team missed Cameron Maben for 50 games, 6 weeks with J.D. Martinez, 7 weeks with Nick Castellanos. So if you start putting all these things together, I think that the people inside the organization, the tenor I got was, what we gave him wasn't good enough. We need to do a better job. He did a good job with what we gave him. Now, I said this on Monday, and I'll say it again. Gator, if you just look at the bottom line, which is generally what I judge a manager or coach on, this is 2 years, no playoffs with a pretty high payroll. So if you want him out, I'm not going to fight you on it. I don't manage a team. I don't run a major league organization. I tend to fall in the bottom line category. But seeking explanation as to why, that's a pretty decent explanation as to why he is coming back.
Well, I'll give you one more. They're not going to sign him to an extension. From what we understand, they're agreeing to just pick up an option for a 4th year. Mm-hmm. So this isn't going to be something you can't get out of long term. This still affords you the opportunity where if you find another managerial candidate in the offseason that you like better and you want to go for it. Because it'll cost you 1 year's salary of Brad Ausmus. Or, hey, I tend to agree with most of what was said there for the reasons for hanging on to Ausmus. The only part that I would hold against is that there are plenty of other managers in baseball that had to deal with catastrophic injuries to their team, and they did just fine. Look at the Indians.
Yep.
But I'm not going to discount the injuries that the Tigers had, and I do think that Ausmus did a better job. I think this has been on the job training for him for these 3 seasons he's been the Tigers manager, and I think he has gotten better. There are things that he does that I don't approve of, but we talked with Jamie and Stoney during the end of their show there. Buck Showalter, the move that he made last night or the move that he didn't make last night could cost him his job. That's not a move that Ausmus has done. Ausmus has been pretty quick to put the closer in the game in the 9th inning, or if you go into extra innings, he's not afraid to put him out there in the 9th or 10th inning and let's go with it if they're the visiting team. I think Jamie's right. Had Ausmus, if the roles were switched, if the Tigers were in the playoffs last night and that move was made, he'd be fired. I think it's kind of you compare the two. A lot of people like Buck Showalter. There's a lot to like about Buck Showalter. He's had a lot of immediate success when he goes to a team, but does he elevate that team? Or does he shoot himself in the foot? Well, he shot himself in the foot last night. It might cost him his job. Our manager didn't shoot himself in the foot, but our manager also didn't get his team to the playoffs.
Let's look at a couple things why it wouldn't have happened that way last night. First of all, Brad Ausmus, and again, this is some of the intel I got today and talking to people. Brad Ausmus, as a young first-time manager, has spent much of his time leaning on Gene Lamont. And Gene Lamont, of course, worked with Jim Leland. Jim Leland's approach to a very similar situation, because they had a game 163, which is basically a wild card game. 2009, they had a game 163. They went to their closer in the 9th, and they left him there into the 12th. Well, what you forget about game 163 is the Tigers took a lead on a 2-out double by Brandon Inge in the 10th, maybe the 10th or the 11th. They had a 5-4 lead, and then Rodney gave it back. And they almost lost it. There was one out runner on third. It was a fly ball, sacrifice fly situation. They gunned the guy down at home plate to force another inning. So, I mean, that was a crazy game. But Leland's approach, and I would imagine Lamont, who is a confidant and somebody that Ausmus leans on, okay? Ausmus leans on Gene Lamont. They would have gone to their closer. They would have gone to their closer. I can't, the line of thinking is very similar to, with Lamont when he worked with Leland and now with Ausmus. But they would have gone to their closer. And if they hadn't, this would be, be a pretty rough day in Detroit. And you're right, it might have cost him his job, and understandably so, because he was probably under a lot more fire. I mean, my guess is Orioles fans were in a bit of happy to be there mode. But the reality here is Ausmus coming back. That's just some of the reasons as to why. 248-539-9797. I do want to hear from a crowd that actually made themselves felt during the morning show, the I'm done with the Tigers crowd. I find that to be interesting because I think it's a loss of perspective of, quote, how bad the Tigers were. You know, this wasn't expected to be much of a baseball team, and I think people forgot that. I went back and looked up all the preseason expectations, okay? Now, the preseason expectations might not mean anything to you, but these are outsiders who aren't emotionally vested in the well-being of the Tigers. They're evaluating the Tigers as an outsider and comparing them to the rest of Major League Baseball. Experts are wrong all the time, but what I'm saying is the emotion, the personal attachment, the I'm fed up with this guy, all that's out. It's just, are they going to win the division? Because you know who wants to be right with their predictions? Experts. 31 Major League Baseball predictions at the beginning of the year. Do you know how many picked the Tigers to win the division?
4.
3. Well done. Do you know how many picked the Tigers to be a wild card team?
6.
3. Went to CBS Sports. Look there. They picked 1 through 5 in every division. They had the Tigers finishing with their 5 experts 4th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 3rd. It's a team that if you ask those same people, based upon what you thought they were going to do, they would tell you they overachieved. Here's where you get into the underachievement. Just look at the payroll. When you look at the payroll, but you know what that payroll is a victim of? We are a bit of a victim of Dave Dombrowski's philosophy. And I like Dombrowski, but the way Dombrowski operates costs money because he willfully trades away blue chip prospects for veteran players. Prospects turn into, if you have a prospect that turns into a valuable player, one of the best parts about them is they're cheap for several years before they hit free agency.
Right.
And Dombrowski traded those guys away, so he was paying a premium at a lot of positions.
Yeah, but when you look at the payroll, the big salaries aren't the ones that killed you. It's the little salaries that killed you. It's the 2 years deals to sign Mike Pelfrey,
right,
to sign Mark.
No,
those are the ones that
I completely agree.
So when you build your team up and you got these giant salaries out there, I think people automatically assume, well, the payroll's too big to. Well, the guys that are getting paid well, most of them perform.
Right. No. I'm just saying though, when people say, look at the payroll, they should be in the playoffs. The payroll is what it is because they haven't developed talent from within. They've traded prospects for veterans, and veterans cost more. It doesn't guarantee anything, but that's the way they've operated for years. It's a far more fiscally frugal way to operate if you can develop from within, and that would be a wonderful trait if Al Avila had it. Don't know if he does or he doesn't yet. It's too early to tell. Anyway, here we sit. Brad Ausmus back. 248-539-9797. We'll give you some insight as to the reasons why. We'll get to your reaction to that. 97.1 The Ticket.